Good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to the second in the 2023 Rural Minds Connections webinar series. I am Julie Lux, Vice President of Communications at Rural Minds, and today is June 21st, which means it is the summer solstice. And a lot of people are getting outside more, of course, in the summertime, enjoying some fresh air and sunshine and maybe a little bit more exercise than usual. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about on tonight's webinar. That is the mind, body, and spirit connection. So how our mental health affects our physical health and our physical health affects our mental health. And we have three terrific presenters who are going to be talking with us about just that. I think it's going to be a fascinating and very lively hour. But before we begin and before I introduce our first guest, I do want to remind you that, as always, at Rural Minds, we very much respect your privacy. So those of you who are watching this afternoon's webinar, we will not know your identity. You are not disclosed in any way. We don't see your name. We don't see your image. However, we very much would like for you to participate. So we do have a Q&A button at the bottom where you can submit questions that then we will answer after all three of our presenters have had a chance to share their great information. So a little bit later in the program, but we will never see your name. We will never see your likeness. That will all be done very much anonymously as well. So, and it will also have some poll questions for you where you'll simply be able to click a button and answer. So we do want you to participate, but we also very much respect everyone's privacy. So with that business out of the way, I'm going to very quickly ask our first poll question. This is a true or false question. And the question is, are there multiple mental health benefits to exercise? We know that there are physical benefits, but what about mental health? And we'll come back with the answer and the results to that poll. But first, I would like to introduce our first guest, Dawn Gritman. Dawn is with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also known as NAMI, and she is going to share with us information on nutrition and exercise and how this benefits our mental health. So Dawn, great to have you with us this afternoon. This evening, we will turn the floor over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Julie. And I do have some slides that I want to present here. So I will get those pulled up. So thank you so much for the introduction, Julie, and happy first day of summer to everybody. Summer is my favorite season, so I'm really excited about this day and the beginning of the summer season. But for me today, I am here to talk a little bit about NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and touch a little bit about nutrition and exercise. So the first question may be, well, what is NAMI? Can get to the next slide. There we go. So NAMI, as I mentioned, is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. It is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization, and we are dedicated to building better lives for millions of Americans that are touched by mental illness and mental health conditions in some way. So not only those that are affected by a mental health condition, but families and caregivers as well. We've been around for over 40 years, so we've grown throughout the country. We are located in most states, so we do have a national office that is based in Arlington, Virginia, and then we do have state organizations. I believe we're in about 48 states, and then we also have over 600 local affiliates, so a lot of different places you can find NAMI. We do have a website. If you are able to take a look, it's nami.org, and there's a lot of information on that website about different mental health conditions, different medications that may be used for those conditions. And we also talk about some of the educational programs that are offered through NAMI state and local affiliates. We also talk about advocacy work that we do. So a lot of things happening over at nami.org. But what our work includes is we provide education, we provide advocacy, support, and we also listen to our stakeholders and also lead the charge in some of these efforts to help, again, improve the lives of people with mental illness and their loved ones. I will make a note too, we do have a NAMI helpline. It is available Monday through Friday, and I believe that will be posted after the webinar as part of the resources. So that is a line for support and resources. And so I encourage you to check that out as well if you're looking for more health information, mental health related information. So as Julie mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we wanted to talk today about mental health and physical health and how they're connected and related. So one of the programs at the National Alliance on Mental Illness that we have is called Hearts and Minds. And that is literally the tagline of the program. And so this is an educational program that may be presented locally somewhere next to you, or it's something that we're looking at being able to provide virtually. So again, the tagline is mental health is physical health. And so just a couple of overall themes from the program. I'm not going to read every word on every slide, but you can definitely take a look here. But you will see that some things we want to convey to people with this and when we touch on nutrition and exercise is that small changes can lead to big impacts. And there are lots of things that you can do for your health and then take those steps to do it. And again, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of changes all at once that can get very overwhelming. So we want people to feel like what they can do is actionable, and you can be an achiever, and you can help to manage and reduce risk for disease. Because one thing we do know with mental health conditions, there's some conditions where the chances of developing something like diabetes, heart disease, lung disease is higher. So we want to give people the information and the tools they can use to help reduce and manage some of the risks for some of those physical diseases that a lot of times may be a part of mental health conditions as well. So a couple of chapters within the Hearts and Minds program and what we're focusing on is nutrition and exercise for at least this section of the webinar. So a couple of takeaways here in the short amount of time that I have to share with you is that nutrition can have a huge impact on both your physical and mental health. So one thing in particular that you may have heard about before is the gut-brain axis. So there's a lot of connections between your digestive system and the brain. And in fact, the digestive system is so essential to how your body functions that scientists sometimes refer to it as the second brain. So a lot of connections there. So as you can imagine, what you eat can affect what is happening with that gut-brain axis. And then as we look over to the right of the slide and look at exercise, one thing is very clear from research, and that is people with mental health conditions can get a lot of benefits from exercise. And not only in terms of mood and helping moods, but also we know there are physical benefits as well, as Julie alluded to. So some of those are listed here, but there are research has shown improvements in hormonal balance, in reduced inflammation, in greater stress resilience, and improved social skills and support and self-esteem. So a lot of great potential benefits from exercise. So again, going back to nutrition, wanted to just give you a couple of tidbits related to nutrition. And roughly 70%, so almost 3/4 of your immune system is housed in your gut. So again, that's where nutrition can play a role. So it can help to improve your resistance to illness and your ability to fight viruses and things that may come your way. So cardiovascular disorders and metabolic disorders have associations with both hormonal and inflammatory pathways. And this goes back to that gut-brain axis. And so there's a lot of connections there. So again, what you can eat can lead to helping or hurting some of those hormonal and inflammatory pathways. And then the last tidbit here is that losing weight and using nutrition and physical activity as treatment tools, for example, in type 2 diabetes, can help to better manage and help to prevent some of the more serious complications of diabetes. For example, it can affect kidney function, it can affect your eyes, it can affect your nerves. So helping using nutrition and physical activity can help manage some of those potential side effects. And it can also help in terms of medications or insulin that you may be taking. Sometimes these changes can lead to a reduction in using some of those medications. And then finally, on some exercise information, we do know we've talked about some of the benefits of exercise here really briefly, but again, here's another list of things that exercise can help with. It can help with blood pressure, improving sleep, which we will hear more about here soon. It can help improve your brain function, and it can also do a lot for your mood. So that middle point is that even 10 to 30 minutes of exercise can help with symptoms of depression. And then if you're consistently exercising 3 to 5 times a week, that can lead to fewer days per month in which people experience poor mental health. So not only does a little bit of exercise go a long way, but consistent exercise can go a long way as well. So one thing I do want to mention as I've listed some of this information is we are not here to tell people to do this and not that. We're not trying to be prescriptive. What the program is doing and what we want to do is we want to give people the research and the information that is available, the evidence, and then you take that information and work with your care team, work with your provider to decide what's best for you. We all know not one size fits all when it comes to exercise, when it comes to nutrition. So I just wanted to finish up by letting people know that we want to, again, spread the evidence, let people know what's out there and what the evidence supports, and then have people make those decisions with their care team. So with that, I will turn it back over to Julie.
Well, thank you so much, Don. And I think so much interesting information in a very short period of time. But I especially noted when you were talking about taking those small steps that can make a big difference, because, so often I think we all get very gung-ho. We're going to go out and we're going to exercise every day and we're going to change our eating habits, and we try to bite off more than we can chew. So
absolutely.
Those small steps can make a difference. And as you said at the end, very important is to consult with everybody's own personal care team, because everything is different. And I'm fascinated by this whole gut-brain connection. So want to learn more about that myself. But speaking of learning more, if people are interested in the NAMI Hearts and Minds program, is this something that is available on your website? How can people find out more about the entire program?
Yes, you can find out more on NAMI.org, and they do have a search function, so you can type in Hearts and Minds to go specifically to the program information. And I do believe, again, there'll be some information included after the webinar that people will receive more information to learn more about the NAMI programs.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much. Don't go away, Don, because we will have a Q&A session a little bit later. But as to our first poll, well, we didn't fool anybody. Everybody knows that there is an important connection between the health benefits of exercise. And you had alluded to some, Dawn, such as depression, but anxiety, even according to the information we have, even ADHD can have a benefit for people if they're suffering from that and get a little bit more exercise. So, but consult with your own healthcare providers on the right way to get that exercise, and also maybe make those changes to your diet that can help in a variety of different ways. But thanks again, Dawn. Don't go away. We will have questions a little bit later, but we do have another poll question before we move on to our next guest. And this is we'd like you to tell us which one of these statements is true. And this will tell you what we're going to talk about next, because the first is A, sleeping problems may be a cause of mental health problems, or sleeping problems may be a consequence of mental health problems, or are both of those statements true? So let us know what you think about that. And as we get the results to the poll, we are going to introduce our next guest, who is Joseph Drzeski. Joseph is with the National Sleep Foundation. And so he is going to give us some good suggestions on no matter where we live, whether we're in a rural area, suburban area, urban areas, sleep sometimes can elude all of us. So this is Joseph's area of expertise. Joseph, welcome. We are delighted to have you here, because I think all of us would love to hear more about the importance of and tips for improving our sleep.
Well, thank you so much, Julie, for having us. Let me share my slides quickly here. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Again, thank you for inviting the National Sleep Foundation to present today. My name is Joseph Drzeski. I am the Vice President of Research and Scientific Affairs at the National Sleep Foundation. And today, it's my pleasure to speak a little bit about that link between sleep health and mental health. And I'll try to boil it down and hone in specifically on some data that we have pertaining to rural America. First, I'd like to give a brief background on who the NSF is, what it is that the NSF does, and really it all starts with the public. The National Sleep Foundation's mission is to help improve health and well-being through sleep education and advocacy. We do all of this through our public-facing campaigns, messaging, communications, and research. And our promise is quite simple. It's to help anyone and everyone be their best slept self. And this certainly includes the segment of the population that resides in our rural towns and communities. Today, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to speak a little bit about some of our newest hot off the presses data that we collected and actually presented fully as part of Sleep Awareness Week. Sleep Awareness Week is our premier annual campaign to raise awareness about the importance and try to encourage everyone to prioritize their sleep. It happens every year in March, and this year it happened March 12th through 18th. During Sleep Awareness Week, we released the results of our annual Sleep in America poll. This poll is an opportunity for the National Sleep Foundation to tap into really the pulse of America. How is America sleeping? What are factors related to sleep health in America? And what are some important behaviors related to sleep in America? This year actually marked the 25th anniversary of our Sleep in America poll. We've been running the poll for 25 years straight. And to really mark this occasion, this 25th anniversary, we really wanted to focus our poll on a topic that we think would be not only timely, but resonate with the masses. So we focused on sleep health and mental health, with both a goal to raise awareness, but also to illuminate some potential avenues for change. What we did in this poll is we conducted a nationally representative probability-based survey of US adults. And what I did here is I segmented that. So I'm only going to speak to the results for the 18% of our poll respondents who reside in rural America. So all the results that I'll talk about here are very specific to rural adults. What we did in this poll is we had people complete our Sleep Health Index, which is a validated tool of sleep behaviors made specifically to be given to the general population. Our sleep satisfaction tool, again, a validated tool, that instead of asking about sleep behaviors, ask more about the perception of sleep and how you feel during the day. And our newest measure, the Best Slept Self questionnaire, which asks about how often people engage in healthy sleep behaviors. We administered all these validated tools in conjunction with the Patient Health Questionnaire 9, which is a very common tool to assess depressive symptoms. So the very first thing I want to highlight that is in terms of sleep, how rural America is sleeping, the situation could use more attention. It could be improved. And what I mean is when we look at the sleep health index and the sleep satisfaction tool, both scores are presented on the screen. We actually design these tools so that you can get a score from 0 to 100, just like you would on an exam in grade school. Everyone wants to get an A. People are usually happy with B's, C's, D's, and F's are what people are trying not to obtain. If you think about rural America's sleep health, we're actually averaging a C. So about 76 on a 0 to 100 scale. Certainly room for improvement. Now, when we think about sleep satisfaction, how we're actually feel during the day, what we think about our sleep, we're averaging 56%, 56 points at an F in terms of rural America. So a lot of work can be done. And this is probably reflected by the fact that on average, rural adults reported sleeping for only 6 hours and 44 minutes per night. National Sleep Foundation recommends that everyone get between 7 and 9 hours per night. So on average, we're sleeping less than this. And in fact, if you were to flip a coin, the majority of people, 56% of rural respondents, were sleeping less than 7 hours per night. So a lot can be done here in terms of our sleep health in rural America. When we're looking at the responses to the PHQ-9, or that questionnaire that asked specifically about depressive symptoms, 1 out of every 3 rural respondents responded that they had mild or greater levels of depressive symptoms. So 1 out of every 3, that's a high number. And in terms of meeting potential diagnosis for a depressive disorder, 14%. So maybe 1 out of every 6 or 7. Again, very high numbers, suggesting that, depression and depressive symptoms are common and more attention is needed in terms of, these symptoms in rural America. Turning our attention to how sleep and mental health were related, really, really interesting findings. First, starting on maybe a little bit of a positive note, almost 90% of rural adults with very good sleep also reported being free of depressive symptoms. So that's a good thing. People who slept well also reported being relatively free of depressive symptoms. However, the flip side of the coin, almost 6 in 10 rural adults who simply said that they were dissatisfied with their sleep. So this is looking at one particular item. Are you satisfied or not with your sleep? 6 in 10 who said they were dissatisfied with their sleep also had elevated levels of depressive symptoms. We found that rural adults who had difficulty falling or staying asleep just 2 nights a week, so not every night, not really an uncommon experience, just 2 nights a week, had higher levels of depressive symptoms than those who had difficulty falling asleep just 1 or 0 nights per week. And 50% of rural adults who slept less than the National Sleep Foundation recommended 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night also experienced elevated levels of depressive symptoms. It's quite strong and striking relationship between our sleep health and our mental health in rural America. Now, again, what can we do about it? Well, our data show that 90% of rural adults who engaged in high levels of healthy sleep behaviors, like what we recommend as part of our Best Slept Self framework, had no significant levels of depressive symptoms. So that's good. There's something that could potentially be done, but what do we mean when we say healthy sleep behaviors? Well, here specifically, I'm referring to the Best Slept Self framework put forth by the National Sleep Foundation. This is a framework that highlights 3 small steps during the day and 3 small steps in the evening that can make a big difference towards your overall sleep health. I'll go through this briefly, and I'll also highlight the rates at which these behaviors are being done, because I think it's quite interesting. First, we recommend that people get exposure to bright light during the day, especially in the morning hours. So before noon is better, but bright light during the day is wonderful. Natural light is best, but indoor light of equivalent brightness will suffice. Here we found that rural adults reported doing this and getting bright light about 77% of possible days. So some room for improvement here. As we just heard, exercise has multitude of benefits, and we recommend that people aim for 30 minutes 5 days a week. Here, rural America is reporting only doing this about 48% of days, so less than half of available days. We recommend everyone eat their meals at consistent times each day. That kind of helps set your body's internal clock. And here we see that this is happening about 70% of days. So again, room for improvement. We suggest that people avoid things like heavy meals, nicotine, caffeine, alcohol before bedtime. This is happening on about 72% of days. We want everyone to enjoy a consistent wind down routine using relaxing, sort of behaviors that occur night after night before you get into bed. We want people to prioritize their sleep, allow for 7 to 9 hours, and have the same sleep and wake times. So this is a little bit of a compound one, so I'll run down each piece. In terms of having a nice, relaxing wind down routine, this is only happening on about 58% of nights. Allowing for that's ever important 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. It's happening on about 72% of nights, and having similar sleep and wake times each day. These are happening 81, 82% of the time. So we're doing pretty good in terms of keeping consistent bed and rise times. We could use some improvement in terms of a relaxing bedtime routine and allowing for 7 to 9 hours per night. The last recommendation is twofold again. Put your devices away an hour before bed. Don't go to bed with the iPad, things like that. And maintain a sleep promoting environment. Keep it cool, quiet, and dark. In terms of putting your devices away an hour before bedtime, this is happening only 1 out of every 4 nights, thereabout. But we're maintaining a nice, cool, quiet, dark environment almost 80% of nights. So you can see the hodgepodge of engagement with these healthy sleep practices. If we total it all up, we're getting about a D. We're engaging in about 66% of these behaviors. So there's room for additional small steps towards these big nighttime improvements. There, I'd like to just wrap up and remind everyone that the NSF is committed to helping anyone and everyone be their best slept self. We have wonderful information on our website at theNSF.org. Thank you.
Oh, Joseph, thank you so much. It's that's fascinating as far as the great tips that you have available to people. But one of the, I'm going to throw a question in here because we've got just a couple of minutes. I think one of the hardest things to do sometimes, and I think for rural people, and especially people who are in the agriculture industry, which is near and dear to my heart, they have a lot of things to worry about. So what is a tip that you can give people as far as how do you shut off that mind so that you can relax and go to sleep?
Yeah, I mean, that's a wonderful question. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with. I think there's different things that you can do. You can try to replace it, do something that's counter to worry. So you can engage in some mindfulness, some relaxation, even focused deep breathing can help. So you can do that. You can also try to move the worry out of the bedroom. It's something that oftentimes people recommend. Set a time during the day, a little bit away from bed, ideally, maybe the middle of the afternoon, where you can just get down on a piece of paper, sit down in a room and give yourself 10, 15 minutes to worry. Try to get it all out. Put it on a piece of paper, all your worries, all your thoughts. So you could try to move it away from bedtime. You can try to replace it. You can also go to bed when you're really tired, and your sleep should take over at a certain point. So there's lots of different, activities that you can do that could combat that, but it is a hard thing to deal with.
Awesome. That's taking a different time of day. I love that idea. That's a great, find that worry time, but not make it during bedtime, because you can change your habits, I guess. What the other thing real quickly, and then we'll give the results of our poll. And again, we aren't fooling anybody tonight. Everybody's really getting the answers that there is that correlation between sleep, that sleep can cause problems, but it can also be the result of problems. So, but what about interrupted sleep? A lot of times, and again, I kind of harken back to ag because that's an area that I personally have worked in for so long, and many people who live in rural areas are engaged in one way or another in the agriculture industry. But what about when you are interrupted? Your sleep is interrupted in the middle of the night. You have to get up and go take care of an injured calf, or it can be a crying baby. It can be, someone that's in a different, in an urban setting. But how do you deal with interrupted sleep?
Yeah, well, you're speaking to me when you mentioned the crying baby. I have 2 young children.
Know firsthand.
Yeah, sleep disruptions are hard, right? They're hard. You feel bad the next day. You feel bad during the night. But I mean, essentially, sleep happens best when your body's ready for sleep, when it's happening at the right time, and you have a sufficient drive or need for sleep. If your sleep's interrupted and you're trying to split it into 2 parts, that's kind of sounds like what you're saying. If you wake up because you have to go work and then you come back, trying to have this polyphasic or biphasic 2 sleep cycles, 2 sleep periods is generally frowned upon. It's not the same as having that one consolidated window. So we recommend people to avoid that if at all possible. Obviously, there are situations like you mentioned where, during certain seasons or certain harvests, maybe that would be inevitable. And in that case, then you still want to try to make sure that you're getting the actual amount of sleep that you need, regardless of when it occurs. Sleep's one of those biological necessities. So is it ideal to split it in multiple parts? No. But is that better than only sleeping 3 or 4 hours at night? Certainly.
So get the sleep when you can.
Yes.
But try to keep it as consistent as possible. Excellent. Well, again, Joseph, same thing as I said to Dawn, don't go away. We're going to come back and ask you some more questions here in a little bit, but just reiterating our poll question, the traditional view was the fact that people had sleep problems, that it was a symptom of your of mental health disorders. But increasingly, we're finding out that there's a relationship between sleep and mental health on both ends of the spectrum, as it were. So it can be a cause when someone's dealing with a mental illness or mental challenge, or it can also be something that can cause you, as Joseph was talking about, the idea of depression, that getting the right amount of sleep can actually help you to combat that depression. So just another wonderful reason why sleep is a good thing. But before we go to our third guest, we do have time for one more poll question. And so I'm going to have to check I'm sorry, Joseph, I'm going to have to use my technology here for just a second. So forgive me, but before we get to the next one here, our third poll question, we're going to give you some multiple choice here. According to the Mayo Clinic, the emotional and physical benefits of meditation. We hear so much about meditation anymore. Well, the benefits, both emotional and physical, can be gaining a new perspective on a stressful situation, building skills to manage your stress, reducing negative emotions, lowering resting heart rate, and improving, again, your sleep quality. So which of these are benefits of meditation, or potentially are they all benefits of meditation? We will tell you the results in just a few minutes, but now we want to welcome our third guest. M. Scahill is with Mental Health America, MHA, and she is going to talk to us about mindfulness and spirituality. So we hear a lot, Em, about mindfulness and how important this is, living in the present, but not sure it's always the easiest thing in the world to do. So please enlighten us. Tell us what we can do to help live a more mindful life and why that's important to our mental health.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. And sure isn't easy, Julie. But yeah, excited to be here. I'll share my screen with y'all. All right. So yes, I'm M. Scahill. I'm the Director of Public Education and Awareness at Mental Health America. So I work on our awareness and education campaigns like Mental Health Month, Pride, Back to School, all that. Mental Health America was founded in 1909 by Clifford Beers, and we're really focused on lived experience and valuing that in mental health, and really seeing everyone experiences mental health, whether that's mental illness or your own mental health, maintaining your own mental health, something that everyone deals with. So start with talking about what even is self-care. So definition-wise, taking action to improve your own health, your own well-being. And when we think about self-care, especially lately, there's been somewhat of a boom of self-care or self-care talk online. And a lot of that is, things like face masks, get a massage, things like that. And those are all great. Those are all absolutely forms of self-care, but they're not the only forms of self-care. When we talk about self-care, we also need to keep in mind things that take care of our core needs that might not be fun. So things like cleaning when your room is a mess and you don't want to deal with it, taking care of your chores, eating nutritious foods, even when all you want to do is order pizza night after night. And again, things that are seen as more indulgent, like a Netflix binge or whatever, those are all absolutely valid forms of self-care. And they're just not the only forms of self-care. And a really helpful way that I've found to reframe this, because it's so easy to slide into seeing self-care as just doing what feels good in the moment, is framing it as self-parenting and thinking about truly treating yourself well and setting yourself up for success in the future. So, I don't want to clean tonight. I don't want to pick out my outfit tonight, but I know in the morning I'll feel better if I've taken care of those things. So thinking of your future self. And so why does this matter? Something we say at MHA is that 1 in 5 people have mental illness, but 5 in 5 people have mental health, right? And just like we take care of our physical health, we try to eat well, we go to the gym to maintain our physical health and our physical bodies, we have to put that work in to keep up our physical health too, right? So this is not only for people who are struggling or in times that you're struggling. We all go through tough times. But these self-care tactics come into play all the time. Your brain is a muscle that you need to be working out to kind of build that resilience for yourself for when those harder times do occur. It also matters because, to put it bluntly, the world is out of control right now. There's a lot going on constantly with, social justice issues, technology, the news. There's so much to keep on top of, not to mention our own personal lives, right? And so something I want to be careful of here too is that there's no way for you to, meditate your way into stable housing, or me giving you tips on deep breathing is not going to help you put food on the table. There are absolutely structural issues that need to be addressed that, you can't fix for yourself, but you can give yourself those moments of peace or restore connection to yourself, to your own life. And even if it's not changing anything long-term, we talked about how it's those, small steps bit by bit, they add up over time, but you meditate for 1 hour, you meditate for 10 minutes, you're not going to feel immediately like everything has changed for you. But you may have given yourself those 10 minutes of peace that you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't do that. And so a big piece of self-care, I think, comes down to just connection. We have a lot of pain in society right now, individual pain, community pain, societal pain. And a lot of it comes from a lack of connection, from loneliness, from isolation. And so, and especially in rural areas, if you're not around people like you, if you're, young and the only people, your only peers that you're around are people in your school and you don't feel like you fit in, there's a million reasons why you may be struggling with that connection. And so there are these different ways that you can foster that connection for yourself. So connection to self is one that can be done through self-care, through reflection. Journaling is one of my favorite ways to connect with myself. And then community, of course, spending time with people in your community, getting out, having friends, having close community connections is super beneficial to your mental health. And then nature. I want to direct, if you guys go to mhanational.org/May, our mental health, May is Mental Health Month, and our Mental Health Month campaign was on different environments that we find ourselves in. And one of those topics was the outdoors. There's a lot of great information there on what connecting with nature can do for your mental health. And I'll get a bit more into that later, but some really, really fantastic stuff there. And so into mindfulness and meditation. I think, as Julie mentioned, we hear a lot about meditation, and it can seem really scary or really intimidating, or like something that's not for you, not for me. I know I felt like that for a very long time. Would try it on and off and be like, yeah, this is boring, not my thing. But overall, what mindfulness really is awareness, acknowledgement, and acceptance. And that can be really difficult because accepting things that we don't like is never fun, right? So accepting that a situation is painful, it doesn't take away that pain. It doesn't make it necessarily any easier to cope with, but it does give you more control and more in tune with yourself. One statistic that I absolutely love, and I've come back to since I found it a few months ago, is that people who practice mindfulness while just doing the dishes, so they were smelling the soap, they were feeling the water on their hands, just really thinking about the experience that they were in, had a 27% reduction in nervousness and a 25% increase in inspiration, which is just such a cool fact to me. I think I can see the connection with nervousness and why focusing on something that you're actively doing would reduce that. But the increase in inspiration piece, I think, is really, really beautiful and really motivating, to know that if you just spend a few minutes really connected to what you're doing, you can really change your outlook on the world, on your day. And so taking time to do that. And then spirituality. Spiritual wellness is one of the 8 dimensions of wellness, and it's one that I don't feel like we talk about that often. MHA is actually working on a Spirit in Mind initiative, and we'll have more information out about that in the fall. But something we've been talking about a lot is how there can be such a stigma against spirituality because so many people think of it as religion and kind of hands up, not for me, not my thing. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. It is absolutely fine if spirituality to you does mean religious, but kind of disconnecting that, and thinking of spirituality as just connection. We're all just spiritual beings. We're all humans. We're all here. And we always have ourselves to come back to, and can kind of come into tune with our own humanity and who we are, is something that we always have at the end of the day. And with that, I will turn it back to Julie.
All right, and thank you very much. The idea of, something so simple as paying attention when you're washing the dishes, or, I've heard that, that also when it comes to eating. Think about how many times, we're eating and we're doing something else and we're not really even tasting what we're eating.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Lots of day-to-day opportunities where we can practice that. So I think that's something, again, very simple that people can do. They don't have to, it's not a big process.
Exactly. Yeah, you make a great point there too, that it doesn't have to be, I'm booking an hour into my schedule for mindfulness. It can be, I'm walking to the store to run some errands and I'm not going to listen to my music. I'm really going to listen to the sounds as I'm walking down the block.
Yeah, look at the trees, pay attention to
exactly
surroundings. Absolutely. Well, again, don't go away. We are going to start our Q&A here in just a second. Again, all of those benefits that we mentioned during on our poll question. Adriel and I were just saying we're going to have harder poll questions. You guys are too smart. But anyway, everyone was very aware that there are many, many benefits, both physical when it comes to things like lowering your heart rate, to to the mental benefits of meditation. But I'm going to start practicing more this idea of just being mindful of what I'm doing at the moment, because it doesn't have to be an elaborate process of meditation, but just that mindfulness that you were talking about, I think is a great way to get into that good practice. But with that said, I'm gonna read. We've got a ton of questions, so we'll get to as many of these as we can in the time that we have left. And Dawn, I'm going to start with one for you, and this is also one I'm interested to hear the answer to. Dawn, you spoke a lot about the gut-brain axis and how important gut health is to mental and overall health. What causes irritation to the gut, and what are some of the best ways to heal the gut?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great question. And so again, just throwing out what the research says. So we're not saying this is what you need to do. There typically are no magic bullets, as we all know. So things that can irritate the gut. So as you may suspect, a lot of your quote junk food, right? So potato chips, cookies, candy, a lot of sugar. So sweetened drinks like soda, pop, depending on where you're at in the country, we have different names for that. So, probably I suspect most of the usual suspects can lead to that inflammation and can affect the hormonal balance. So some things that are good that can be healing when we're talking about that, helping your gut and healing your gut. Some foods that potentially can be helpful. And again, things you guys have probably heard of before. We have prebiotics and probiotics. So probiotics are kind of that quote good bacteria, so that helps line your gut and helps to keep it healthy. And then the prebiotics are kind of interesting because they're kind of like food for the probiotics. So some examples of prebiotics would be certain vegetables like onions, cabbage, asparagus, green peas, sweet corn, and then some examples of probiotic. Usually when I hear probiotic, my first thing is fermented foods. So you hear things like sauerkraut, kombucha, pickles, pickled vegetables, those kind of things. So those are some potential foods that you can include in your diet that can help with that healthy gut bacteria and help your gut.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Not maybe yogurt.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Right,
absolutely.
kind of yogurt could be something
Yep.
that, but it's getting rid of those sugars that is not it's not always the easiest. But
yes, very true. Easier said than done.
but making those small switches, again, going back to what you were saying about making small changes. So
yep.
Great thought. Okay, Joseph, let's talk about sleep for a second here. What are some of the promising new developments for measuring the quality and duration of an individual's sleep?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a tricky question too. So let's see what I can come up with. Obviously, there are lots of consumer devices that are kind of proliferating the market, right? You have things that you wear on your wrist, rings, headbands, devices that you can slide in between your mattresses, nearables they have now that you just put on your bedside that kind of get you with sonar and stuff that all purport to measure your sleep. The key is if they're ever picking up anything that we could relate back to sleep quality. So I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I always believe that an individual is the best judge of how they're actually sleeping. Now, all that aside, the National Sleep Foundation has put forth consensus statements about markers for sleep quality. And there's an interesting one that I'd like to highlight, because I think it can help reduce people's anxiety about sleep a little bit. National Sleep Foundation says that a good sleep efficiency is just a fancy number that says, how much of the time that you are in bed that you are actually asleep. So it's a ratio. If you're in bed for 10 hours and you sleep 9 of those hours, you would have a 90% sleep efficiency. They say the good sleep efficiency is anything 85% and up. You could do the math on that. I did it quickly because I already saw the question come through. So if you're in bed for 8 hours, that means you can be awake for 1 hour and 12 minutes and still have what's considered good sleep efficiency. sometimes we get into this habit that if we lay there and if we're awake and we're not falling asleep right away, that all of a sudden our minds go and we get wrapped up into the, oh no, I'm not asleep. Tomorrow's going to suck. I need to measure it. I need to do all these sorts of things. And that's not always the case. There's also this idea that was recently developed called ortho insomnia. It's a really fascinating idea, but the idea is that the kind of reliance and overdoing it on the measurement, that all these wearable devices and focusing on all these different sleep metrics, waking up in the morning and looking at your phone to see how much time I spent asleep, how much time was I in deep sleep, and getting all these metrics back can actually lead to people developing disturbed sleep. So it's a really interesting concept that we didn't have 10 years ago because we didn't have these devices. So there are some interesting developments out there, but there are also developments that might be working against the grain a little bit, if you will. I think, measured response, always just trying to self-reflect. How do you feel during the day? Are you able to get through what you need to get through? Are you able to function well? If the answer to those things is yes, then you got at least an adequate amount of sleep and adequate quality sleep.
So sometimes these great devices actually be a little bit more detrimental than they are helpful in the long run.
So much so that there's even a term now. Yeah.
Yes. Trust yourself. So awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. And this is a question, and this is actually something that crossed my mind. Someone wants to know, how do you find and keep community? They said that they find it hard to connect with people in their areas. So how do you find those people to interact with? Because we know that interaction is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in rural areas too, if you're not with people like you, connecting with people online is a great way to do it. Obviously that comes with some additional challenges and, potential risks. But doing that in a safe way, finding people that, you feel similar to, that you feel understood by. There are a lot of great resources online that are either, mental health peer support focused, or more focused on, common interests like, gaming platforms or different forums, different accounts. There's a lot of people have found community through Instagram accounts that have popped up that are like, girls walking in San Diego, that kind of put together community events. So getting yourself into those environments where you're with new people, it's definitely something that can feel really scary at first. But like going to meetup.com has a ton of great events, going to those events, finding Facebook groups or Facebook events, and trying to meet people there, putting yourself out there. Unfortunately, it is kind of a numbers game, which it can feel so demoralizing if you keep meeting people and you're just not connecting. But there are people out there for you. There are absolutely people out there, and you sometimes just got to keep trying until you find them.
Yeah. And I think your point about finding those people who have like interests, that if you share an interest, that's a good starting point.
Yeah. And it can make it easier too, because it gives you something to talk about, gives you something to bond over. It's not just like, hey, I'm looking for a friend. How about you? It's like, hey, I love the painting you're doing. Look at mine. And all of a sudden the conversation's going and you already have something to talk about.
Excellent. That's a great suggestion. Dawn, I'm going to go. We're just going to kind of round robin it here, folks. What would you recommend? This is a good one. What would you recommend to people who struggle to find the energy and or motivation to exercise, even if they know it would help them? I think that's probably a question that a lot of people are thinking.
Yes, absolutely. So a couple of things to think about. And a lot of this is, again, probably things people have heard of, but we do have research and evidence to back it up. But we were just talking about connections, and we were talking about having people around you and sharing common interests. So if you have some family members, friends, people in your faith community, whatever group that may be. A lot of times people will find exercise more enjoyable if they're with a group of people. Sometimes that helps from an accountability standpoint. So if you know that you have talked to your friend and you're planning to get up at 6 a.m. to go on a walk, and you know, again, you kind of have that accountability to that person that you have already made plans to do that. So that can be really helpful. I think a lot of times too, people think that exercise is it's more of a chore. And so exercise can be a lot of different things. So it doesn't have to be going to a gym. There's a lot of things you can do where you don't have to go to a gym. You can, again, with your care team and everything, making sure everything's appropriate for you, you can lift things in your home. You can do strength training with boxes or things like that. You can do walking, again, is a great activity for people who are getting started, but things like dancing, things like doing chores around the house, going up and down the stairs. There's a lot of things. Some of those may not necessarily be all that enjoyable, but you can think of, if just getting up and moving your body, there's a lot of different activities that really can be a lot of fun, especially too if you have somebody to do it with, and you can be having a conversation and you're exercising and you don't even realize it because you're enjoying the conversation.
You mentioned dancing, and I was thinking about that because you kind of dancing, you could kill two birds with one stone. You get community and you get some exercise. Yep. And I can always walk if I walk my dog. If I have to walk by myself, it doesn't work as well, but that is helpful as well. So just finding that one thing that doesn't seem quite so much like a chore. You don't have, like you said, I think that's good advice. Don't think you have to go to the gym. That it doesn't have to be that. There's other ways too. There's other ways to get it that might be more fun. Joseph, let's see where okay. Somebody talked about there are many products marketed directly to consumers as alternatives to CPAP for obstructive sleep apnea. We hear a lot about sleep apnea anymore. Are any of these products supported by high quality scientific evidence?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And CPAP, or continuous positive airway pressure, is the gold standard. It works if used on a routine basis, but it works similar to eyeglasses. If you take your glasses off, nothing really fixed your eye. It helped your eyes see, right? Same thing with CPAP. You actually need to use it. And that's where the difficulty usually falls with people, is that you're putting something that's a little obstructive on your mouth, your nose, over the whole thing. It's making sounds. There's hoses connected to it. You have to put water in it. There's lots of difficulties. So there are, again, a lot of, things being directly marketed out there, and alternative therapies. There's mandibular advancement devices. There's surgical options, various different surgical options. There's even various exercises that you can do for your tongue and for your upper palate. Lots of different things. I don't want to speak too much about like the rigor of the science supporting these things. What I would say is to look to see if devices and alternatives are FDA approved, and then also make sure to check the indications. Something can get approval, but it can be approved for people who might not be like you. It can be approved for people who maybe have mild sleep apnea. You might have moderate or severe sleep apnea. So you really need to check to make sure that the indication, the best way to do that obviously is to work with a licensed sleep physician in terms of alternatives to PAP therapy.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I was just thinking, it goes back to what Don said, and this is certainly worth reiterating. Everybody's different. Talk to your healthcare team, your healthcare providers to find that out. Unfortunately, we are just about out of time. Em, I want to ask you this very quickly though, because this is a good one. Some people are wary of anything spiritual, even meditation. Quickly, what can you say to people to encourage them to try it?
To try meditation specifically, I would say reframing it as just a moment of peace. It doesn't have to be a guided meditation or something formal at all, but just taking a moment to be quiet and sit with your thoughts is a great start.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Well, Huge thanks to Don and Joseph and Em for a very lively and fascinating hour. And thanks to all of you who are watching for your terrific questions. As we wrap up this evening's webinar, I want to remind everyone who's watching that you will be receiving a short survey. And these surveys are extremely helpful to us in determining the subject matter for upcoming webinars. So please, when that survey pops up, if you will give us, just take a few minutes and give us your feedback, because it is greatly appreciated. And there's lots more good information on our website, ruralminds.org, as well as on the websites for these three great organizations that our guests represent. So with that, thank you all for being with us. Again, thanks to our guests, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Rural Minds Connections webinar. Have a great evening.